comments. We have simultaneous translation provided, channel 1 local language to English, and I suggest you should check your headsets. During the debate, we will have two different panels. Between the panels, we will have a short break to allow the panelists to change. We will have Zoom audience, between 130, 140 persons. They will ask questions through the chat function. And if you would like to engage in the discussion, please do so. I would be more than happy if you ask questions, and I don't need to invent questions, or we will have 2 hours of hopefully interesting dialogue, and I will ask you to signal me when we are live. Good morning, everyone. I welcome our guests here in Dom Mladin, Sarajevo, and all those who follow us on Zoom. I hope that you have very good internet connection. Welcome to the conference about clean environment and healthier future, organized within the project of the EU. We are together, we are EU. On behalf of our host, His Excellency Johan Sattler, the head of the delegation in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the special representative of EU in Bosnia and Herzegovina. May I welcome our panelists who are here today with us. And I welcome all of you who will join us through the video link. I also welcome our guests, young activists, professionals, analysts, and who will hopefully take part in this dialogue. At the beginning, allow me to share with you several technical points. First of all, it is very important to note that we organize this event in compliance with all precautionary measures in especially adapted premises and through the Zoom platform. Unfortunately, we were not able to organize uh, and gather a huge number of persons in one room as the EU has done before. But I'm happy to inform you that we have over 100 persons following us on Zoom, representatives of young people, civil society, academia, media, and others. And of many of them will join us through the Zoom link. I hope that this will not be an obstacle to dynamic and constructive, meaningful discussion. I invite the audience to ask questions through the Zoom chat function. And you can also use language option, one for local language, two for English. I retain the right to merge your questions if they are similar or identical. At the beginning, let us hear the message from the presiding of the presidency, Mr. Shafik Jaferovic. Dear Ambassador Sattler, Your Excellencies, dear ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to address you. And we are now facing a very unique period in the history of human nation due to climate difficulties and other difficulties. We cannot continue this way. It is not the question whether we need to change the attitude, but how we can do it as fast as possible. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country with huge wealth and natural beauties. I will dare say that the beauty of of the nature in Bosnia and Herzegovina, its rivers, its old growth forests, has no pandan in this part of the world. We are very happy and pride for having this wealth, but unfortunately we have not paid sufficient attention to its protection and conservation, and we have been destroying it through through traffic, construction, and even through individual actions. This has to change in our several century tradition, many century tradition. It is we are used to cope with difficulties, and we now need to address the problems that were brought by the industrialization. Coal-based industry and fossil fuel-based industry brought huge impacts and pollution in our country. The red light has been blinking so long now, and it is time for green action. The whole community in Bosnia and Herzegovina, led by the governments, must show devotion and commitment in the fight against the climate change and adaptation. First, we primarily need to focus uh, and to struggle through our legislation and through the implementation of the conventions and agreements Bosnia and Herzegovina signed, as well as through the goals that were set by the EU in the strategic program Green Deal. More specifically, the governments must speed up in implementing the recommendations clearly stated in the opinion of the EC with regard to the environmental protection. To this end, I welcome some very important initiatives, such as the conclusion of the Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina on banning the construction of small hydropower plants and commitment of the government of the Federation with regard to this ban. Bosnia and Herzegovina welcomes the Green Agenda program for the Western Balkans, and on this occasion, I inform you that we will take part in this program, uh, which will be implemented under the auspices of the EU as a part of the Green Deal. It is crucial that Bosnia and Herzegovina was included in this program, and our institutions should get ready to engage in serious interventions in depollution of water, air, and land transition from linear to circular economy and exploitation of resources and sustainable agriculture and conservation of biodiversity. Bosnia and Herzegovina is on its path to become a member of the EU, but disregarding its membership, we are sharing your faith and future, and we want to take part in the common European action. This historical moment is marked by a difficult economic situation as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. But all economies and all developments, future development must involve green development. This is not just a need, it is a must. Uh, Everything will depend on our commitment and to fight for a climate neutral economy by banning fossil fuels and carbonization. Of course, in doing so, we must take care of the workers who work in this economy. Our efforts will go towards this. An old saying says that we did not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we rather borrowed it from our descendants. Therefore, our obligation to future generation is to leave them with a healthy, clean, and safe environment. Thank you. May I thank the Office of the presidency for providing us with this message. Ms. Calavera Ruiz, Director for the Western Balkans at the European Commission's Directorate General for Neighborhood and Enlargement Negotiations, is unfortunately not with us today, but we are looking forward to see you soon in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thank you very much for joining us through the video link. I hope you can hear us well, and I'm certain that you have a lot to say regarding today's topic.
Thank you very much.
Hvala
Can you hear
vam.
me? Thanks. Your Excellencies, dear Secretary General Melinda Brago, distinguished guests, it is a great pleasure for me to be able to address you, even if virtually, given the restrictions we have on travel, but to address this high-level event on a clean environment and a healthier future. I hope that COVID will allow me to travel soon to be with you in Sarajevo again. But in the meantime, thanks a lot for having me here today through the Zoom. Environment is a particularly important issue. And I think this is a very timely event because this is the time of the year when we see that the air in the capitals of all the Western Balkans start to become very difficult to breathe. And when we see the coal fuel power plants, the household heatings, the transport emissions, all these contribute to climate change, and the impact is nowhere more visible than in the persistent pollution of our skies. When one adds this climate change challenge to the challenge that this year COVID pandemic has brought, our 2020 reality offer seems closer to a dystopian science fiction movie, but it doesn't need to be like that. Confronted to these challenges, we need to see as well the opportunities that this crisis brings to us. And I fully agree with the opening remarks of the chairman of the council. The Western Balkans' rich natural landscape and biodiversity is an extraordinary asset for this region that needs to be preserved. Preserving nature and our environment is key to a new model of economic growth that may also ensure a better quality of life for our citizens. The response to COVID-19 has demonstrated the power of regional cooperation and has shown that the European Union treats the Western Balkans as our future member states already today. So we put a financial package of 3.3 billion to address the immediate needs of the health sector. And you see it every day. I mean, our head of delegation, Ambassador Sattler, is every day on the news delivering this aid already to you, and to mitigate the socioeconomic impact of this pandemic. And together with the enlargement report, the Commission has adopted this month an economic and investment plan that is setting out an investment package of up to 9 billion euro in grants direct to your economies. And together with this, we are setting up a guarantee facility that has the potential to bring investment of up to 20 additional billions by securing public, private, and private investment partnerships. So let me be clear. The post-COVID pandemic economic recovery model will need to be green and digital. This is the EU approach for a transition to a sustainable, socially just, resilient, and climate neutral economy. This is what citizens and young generations are asking for. And let me remind the politicians around the table that these young generations are the ones that will vote in the future elections. So we need to listen to them. It is time to leave behind the carbon economy of the past century. It is time to look to the future. This is important as well to better equip the world to cope with future systemic shocks. This is why the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, in line with the European Green Deal, is an integral part of the economic and investment plan that we have just adopted. The twin green and digital transition is the EU approach to recovery, to ensure environment is protected and to create sustainable business opportunities. The green agenda for the Western Balkans is a new growth strategy for the region, the same that the EU Green Deal is the newest growth strategy for the EU. Both strategies build on the same pillars. They want to first unlock the potential of the circular economy. They want to second, promote sustainable production patterns and food systems. On third place, they want to exploit the huge tourism potential of this region natural environment. And fourth, but not least, we want to address the cost of non-action on pollution, including on healthcare systems. So we're looking forward that the green agenda for the Western Balkans will be endorsed by the heads of the states and governments at the upcoming summit in Sofia on 10th of November. It's crucial that we get the political commitment from the highest level of the decision makers in this region. The economic and investment plan will support the green agenda with concrete investments. And you have seen we have flagships which are extremely pertinent for the challenges we have ahead of us. We have flagships on sustainable transport connections. We have flagships on renewable energy. We have flagships on transition from coal. We have flagships on a renovation wave, which looks at public and private buildings to increase energy efficiency. And we have, of course, flagships on waste and water management. And this is only the starting point. I mean, we want to work with the authorities in the region and with civil society, so more investment ideas come into the picture. And this will be complemented with the investment we want to see generated by the guarantees that will attract the private sector towards the region. You know, we want to see that this approach helps the Western Balkans make a quantitative leap forward and move from the traditional linear economic model to a circular economy, where the use of resources is decoupled from the economic growth. Let me stress how important it is for Bosnia and Herzegovina and for the Western Balkan region as a whole not to lose this opportunity. The substantive investment that the EU is doing and continue to do in this region is put at risk by the administrative hurdles and by the political turf battles that undermine the impact and the sustainability of this investment. I'm thinking, let me give you an example, the Mostar waste water system, for which the EU provided €5 million grant. The facility is ready since 2016, but 4 years later, we are at the end of 2020, it is still not in operation. This is not acceptable, and this is very difficult to explain, first to your citizens, but as well to the EU taxpayers. So let me assure you, we want to continue investing in the environment sector in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have new IPA projects which aim at higher standards in the priority area of flood risk management, water management, including investment in water supply systems, for instance, in Sarajevo and in Banja Luka, and in waste recycling for a circular economy. But we all need to do more. Political authorities at all levels of government in Bosnia and Herzegovina need to step up to the challenge. And civil society have to help us to remind this obligation. State and entities need to implement the environmental approximation strategy in a countrywide, coordinated, and harmonized manner to ensure that the EU acquis, the EU legislation, and our EU standards are respected across all the country. Environment is one of the most complex and demanding chapters of all the EU legislation when we will start our EU accession negotiations. And I'm very concerned because Bosnia and Herzegovina is lagging really behind in aligning the regulatory frameworks to the EU law. This is an area which has strong and direct benefits on the health and the quality of life of all citizens. That's why the political authorities need to step up their efforts, including in systematic and holistic monitoring. Implementation cannot be put dependent only on a project-by-project approach. It has to be much more holistic and much more politically driven. Local authorities need to play its part as well. I'm glad that this year the Sarajevo canton has launched a 30 million tender for new trams to overhaul the public transport system. And this has been done thanks as well to the loans by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the European Investment Bank. This is the type of change that the people want and need to see. I'm sure that you're going to hear right now more after I finish on the Green Agenda during this first session of the conference. And I want to thank my colleagues in the European Commission and the colleagues from the Regional Cooperation Council to make sure that you will receive that presentation. But before I end, let me really remind everybody again, the Green Agenda is a win-win agenda. It is an agenda, of course, in which we all, the ones that we are here today, we win. But more important, it is the generations whose future depends on the decisions that we take today on this Green Agenda that are looking at us today. So I want to wish you a very fruitful discussion today, and I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to make these opening remarks. The floor is yours. Thank you again.
Hvala, hvala gospođi Ruiz Calavera. Vjerujte, i naša su očekivanja u Bosni i Hercegovini poprilično velika kad je u pitanju zelena agenda, kako bismo svakako sačuvali ove prirodne ljepote o kojima ste i vi sami govorili, ali i ostavili jednu zdraviju i čišću državu generacijama koje dolaze.
We have great expectations too, as we want to keep this nature to the future generations. Now I give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Johan Sattler.
Ministers, Secretary General Bregu, Director Calavera, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as the host of today's conference on the environment, it's a great pleasure to warmly welcome all of you who are with us today, either here or online. Given the circumstances, and we've all seen this morning the COVID numbers in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I'm extremely happy that we are able to meet today in a safe way. Let me underline that. We are here only 15 people in this huge Dom Mladih in Sarajevo, but many, many people have joined us online, and thank you for doing so, to discuss one of the most critical issues of this country, BIH, but also of the whole region, protecting the environment and thereby the fundamentals for life, among them clean air. Talking about clean air, let me start with a little story. Human beings are creatures of habit and routine. Psychologists and behaviorists have been studying this for many, many decades. It's difficult to get rid of bad habits, but good habits give structure for our lives. They help us navigate through the intricacies of our daily lives. Soon after moving to Sarajevo here a year ago, I came here mid-September, I acquired a new habit. It started when I was waking up in mid-October last year to this typical Sarajevo smell of the air, which you have from October, basically, way into February, sometimes even March. And this is this mixture of hard to define, but coal, sulfur, things which get burned here, unfortunately, way too much. It was shocking to me because it reminded me of the time when I was here right after the war in 96, 97. And I was a bit disappointed because nothing had changed, basically. But there was one thing which has changed in the meantime, and this is technology. So I got this new app, and it's called My Air Quality Index. and uploaded it on my cell phone. And since then, it is one of my morning rituals. After waking up, I check the AQI, the air quality index. And this morning, I did the same thing. And guess what it showed me? It showed me in my neighborhood up there in Bielave, an index of 155. Just to remind, this is the PM matters. You're going to hear more today from the experts what this actually means. But to give you a ceiling the European Union has, it is 50. And 50 is what you should not surpass. And you should have few days per year where you surpass this 50. Today, and this is a sunny day, there's no fog outside, it's still relatively warm. We had 155. So you might ask, why do I do this? Why do I go through this? Well, the simple answer is it guides me through the day. So it guides me through the day, telling me, well, if it's possible, spend less time outside. And then definitely when I see this in the morning, I skip my morning run. But on an even more important level, it raises my awareness about the environmental situation in this country and in the city of Sarajevo. And this is what needs to happen in BIH much more. People need to have the awareness, raise the awareness, change the behavior, but very importantly also make it public, make it a public issue, and ask for more from your authorities, ask for more from your politicians. And this is one of the aims of today's conference, raising the awareness about the dangers, about the fragility of environment, of the natural beauty of BIH and the whole region. The mountains, rivers, small water streams, thick forests, the beautiful meadows leave one breathless. This reminds us all of not only how beautiful this country is, but also how privileged we are here to share and enjoy these beauties and natural richness. It emphasizes the need to cherish them and to act responsibly, to carefully protect these gifts of nature. As President Jafaric has mentioned before, we are borrowing these resources from future generations, and it's our duty to look after them. So far, BIH, let's be blunt here, hasn't taken many steps, very few steps actually, to protect its environment. But this also means that quick gains can be made if decisive action is taken, but it needs to be taken soon. During this conference, we aim to have information sharing and discussion on the Green Deal. You heard it from Director Calavera. We're going to speak about the green agenda for the Western Balkans, the green recovery, and very much also about the air quality in BIH and especially in Sarajevo. The green agenda for the Western Balkans, similarly to the EU Green Deal, represents a truly unique opportunity to develop our societies and economies in a sustainable, smart, modern, and green manner. And this is very important. You heard it before. The EU puts its money where the mouth is. So we are not just talking about it. We are also walking the walk, if you want. There is a lot of investments which were now agreed upon the heads of states during the negotiations on the multi-annual financial framework, up to 500 billion euros in the next 7 years in the EU. But there's also a very sizable package foreseen for the Western Balkans. You heard the figure of 9 billion. This is the economic and investment package. This is about connectivity. This is about highways. This is very much also about clean energy and about environmental projects. And there's a good size and a good number. I was happy to see that in the report, which was published 2 weeks ago and presented by Commissioner Vare. There's a good number of projects also foreseen for BIH. This means for us not to fall back in our old ways, but also to use this moment as an opportunity to take concrete measures now to guarantee a sustainable recovery and a long-term growth that protects our most precious resource, the world we live in. The pandemic has shown that we can make profound changes to the way we live our personal lives. Such changes are also essential for the environment. To build on what is already mentioned, a strategic transition to greener, more sustainable economies involve, among others, a circular economy, innovative technologies, decarbonization, very important also for this region and this country, biodiversity, and solutions for pollution. Importantly, this shift also allows BIH to meet its obligation of the Paris Agreement on Climate, to which it is a signatory. As I've indicated, there are many environmental measures that should be taken, but one that stands out is improving the air quality. As you will be able to hear during the conference, this should be one of the most concerning issues for PH authorities. Results of a recent survey we did here in Sarajevo confirms that citizens increasingly see and feel that this is the biggest environmental concern. And rightly so. Let me just give you one figure, and it is from a study which the World Bank did last year. And it puts a very concrete figure to actually what we pay here in BIH in terms of human lives. There is about 3,300 premature deaths per year in Bosnia and Herzegovina because of air pollution. And with this, BIH is unfortunately among the world leaders when it comes to air pollution. So the statistics are very worrisome. And my colleague who will speak after me from the Swedish Embassy will reflect more on this. Allow me to use, by the way, the opportunity here to thank all our partners who are with us on this very important topic. First of all, today, the Swedish Embassy, many EU member states who are active in this field, the Regional Cooperation Council, the UN, and many other partners. Many authorities around the world have struggled with improving air quality in the past, and some of them have overcome it. And we'll hear about some examples later today. Authorities in this country, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, can and must do the same. In closing, let me be very clear. Taking environmental action is crucial and it requires authorities at all levels to take a holistic approach. The EU Green Deal principles require harmonized actions in different sectors, such as in energy transport, in agriculture, in industry, to enable achieving these ambitious environmental and climate-regulated targets. These targets imply decoupling economic growth from reckless use of natural resources. For example, energy generated from renewable energy sources should be strongly supported, but not at the detriment of the environment. As we have seen, the engagement of civil society has been crucial to highlight that especially small hydropower plants devastate beautiful river streams and have a negative impact on ecosystems and biodiversity. But of course, authorities also need to be responsive. What is encouraging, and we heard it from President Jafaric before, is that the Federation authorities in this country pledged to make a complete review of all the planned projects. And having worked in the region for a long time, I know what a huge issue this is, basically in all countries of the Balkan Peninsula. The last figures I saw from Rivers Watch is that there are about 2,500 hydropower plants currently planned in this region, 165 of which are planned in BIH. So you can imagine how big the potential damage is to the environment of the whole region. We also need to see reduction in emissions. And let me here also give you a couple of very concrete examples. The biggest contributor, we've been speaking about the air quality here in this town. The biggest contributor to this level, which I showed you, which I told you before, 155 this morning. The biggest contributor in this town is the burning of solid waste by homes. So there is this is a clear mandate for the authorities to take action, and we are in touch with the Canton of Sarajevo authorities. I'm happy to see that finally there is some acknowledgement, but there needs to be speedy action to finally phase this out, the possibility of burning solid waste at home, and especially this coal and other plastic and whatever is burned here in this city. The second example I want to give you is about industry. There are about 250 coal-powered power plants still in the European Union, 250. If you compare to what the 16 coal power plants in this region, in the Western Balkans, emit in CO2, this is higher than all 250 power plants, coal-fired power plants in the European Union. So this is just one figure which makes clear how damaging these 16 power plants, coal power plants in this region are. But it's also a clear reminder that, you know, if you still have this technology, there's a lot you can do if you want to invest. You know, this is the message to the city authorities, but also to the investors, of course, to those who are in charge of these power plants, to look at technology and improve technology. Collective environmental effort will have a positive impact on citizens' lives and their welfare, and it will boost the economy and protect the environment. For these reasons, once again, I strongly encourage the BIH authorities to demonstrate a full commitment towards the environmental action in line with its obligations and EU recommendations. I'm pleased to hear from President Jaforovich that the importance and relevance to support these efforts related to the green agenda for the Western Balkans are well understood. Moreover, we look forward to the endorsement of the green agenda at the summit, which is planned for 10th of November in Sofia. We chose the timing for this conference today to coincide. This is not an accident. We chose it to coincide with the beginning of the heating season, to focus citizens and authorities' minds on the issue. This is not a luxury issue. Some people tell me in discussions, well, you know, this is something for you guys, for the developed world. It's not for us. This is absolutely wrong. This is not a luxury issue. This is not an afterthought. This is basically, and especially if you look at the 3,300 premature deaths in BIH every year, this is a life and death issue. And we better wake up to the acute dangers of dirty air and of dirty rivers to our health. Raising the awareness is what we want to do today of citizens, but especially of politicians. So I can only encourage you to do the same thing what I did a year ago. Develop a new routine. Develop this new habit of yours, and go to the App Store and get the My Air Quality Index app. And I can assure you, it probably will become a habit. I can also assure you, it will focus your mind. And if it focuses enough people's minds, it will eventually also focus politicians' minds. The time to do is now. Thank you.
Zahvaljujem se njegove ekscelenciji. Ne znam, možda se vi ponekad ujutru tako...
Thank you, Your Excellency. I don't know whether you ask yourself when you look at your application, do these people love their country? So that's a question for all of us to think about it when we do things that we shouldn't. Okay, now we'll hear the next speaker, who is representing the Embassy of Sweden, but also the country of Sweden, who is the champion of ecology. And their practices are the golden standard. They are something that we want to become when we grow up. When we grow up, we want to be Sweden. We have Mr. Sergelsson here with us, who is chargé d'affaires of the Embassy of Sweden.
Thank you. My greeting to everyone participating, especially to Ambassador Sattler. Thank you for your energy in all these issues, and to Director Ruiz Calavera, to Secretary General Brego, other excellencies and experts, participants, all. It's a pleasure to be here. Here's a person who also uses the app, definitely, each morning. But here is also a person who loves this country. So just to respond to your questions. It's a true pleasure for us to be joining hands and to be partners with the government of Bosnia and Herzegovina, with the EU office, and also with the Regional Cooperation Council to organize this important conference. The topics that we will be discussing here today are, as has been said, key to our future for all of us. You mentioned Sweden as a champion. Yes, we would of course like to think of us about us like that. This is a key priority for our government, protection of the environment and the climate action. We do try to lead by example. I would, however, say that we have a long way to go also. The struggle is definitely not over, especially if you look at the situation in the world today. But we are also, I think, in this really inspired by the drive and the resolve of the European Union, as demonstrated by the Green Agenda, by the Green Deal, and the ambitious goals of reducing climate impact. In these times, we see extreme climate events and environmental crises becoming more frequent all over, including in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We see droughts, fires, devastating floods, etc., affecting people's livelihoods. And environmental pollution and consequences of climate change definitely doesn't know any borders. They affect everything around us, our ecosystems and the food we eat and everything basically. Also, they are compromising our health and having a negative effect also on our global economies. In this, air pollution is one of the very important environmental threats. And Ambassador Sattler, you referred to some figures which are quite shocking, I must say, but just to add to that, data from the World Health Organization confirm this very grave situation. It says that air quality in this country is actually among the worst in the world, and mortality caused by air pollution is the fourth highest globally. Concretely, the death rate attributable to air pollution in BIH has been estimated at 558 persons per 100,000 people. The equivalent figure in Sweden is 1. So there is a huge potential and a huge need to be working on this in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So from our side, as a member state, we are supporting Bosnia and Herzegovina in reducing emissions and taking care of this fantastic asset provided by its environment. We do that by improving energy efficiency. We work on air quality management. There will be an expert actually from both these fields or experts participating in the second session today from our support in these areas. We also work on solid waste management and wastewater treatment. And we all along try to be complementary to the EU and other funding sources. So there is a very strong focus in what we do on making headway when it comes to the EU acquis and the regulations. In this, energy efficiency is key in fighting air pollution and also for improving the environment in general. And indeed, it does bring positive economic and social benefits to people. We must remember, all of us, that we cannot turn this around alone. So no single person can resolve this problem. Everyone must participate, as has been pointed out. So there is, of course, a large scope for government to do this and should do it, but also the citizens, business community, and civil society are key actors in this. So I would say if we continue our dependence on fossil fuels and don't turn the environmentally sustainable practices and societies, we will have a growing threat against our health and prosperity. We need to start acting now, obviously, to become sustainable and to be climate smart and to protect the planet before it is too late. We have a strong belief that we can together turn this around, the negative development that we see at present. And I'm really happy that this conference was organized because it contributes to increasing awareness about these issues. So thank you. Finally, I would just like to say that it's fantastic to see you all here today. There is a big number of participants. I myself for participating virtually, but still I'm really looking forward to listening and to learning from today's event. Thank you so much.
Hvala gospodinu Torvaldsenu što ste nam se pridružili putem Zoom call-a. Sada ću zamoliti
Thank you, Mr. Tarasen, for joining us through video link. And now I will invite Ms. Melinda Bregu to join us through video link. She is Secretary General of the RCC and one of the key partners for the Western Balkan countries and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Welcome. Can you hear us well?
Dobar dan, yes, I can. So I will start now, and thank you very much for inviting. I hope you do hear me. Yeah?
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thanks. So, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, dear Johan, dear Veva, ladies and gentlemen, first I have to apologize to Johan for not being present there in person. But you know that traveling in the region and connectivity is quite challenging even in normal times. And let alone when you are stuck between different activities. So we had two events in Tirana this week, a ministerial 2 days ago. Another one is coming in 2 days, which is the digital summit. And you should know, Johan, that now it takes not 10 hours, but 15 hours by car from Tirana to Bosnia because of all this, the problems at in the borders and the reconstructions in Montenegro. So again, I need to apologize because I promised you that I should have been there in person. So let me start by expressing the gratitude for organizing this conference, which is quite an important one, discussing on pertinent issues in safeguarding the environment. And an area where, as we all know, the cooperation truly is the key. I don't want to scare anyone in there, and yourself, dear ambassador, and others who are mentioning a lot of figures that come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I will just give some more statistics from the region. From our Balkan Barometer, the flagship report and survey that we prepare each year, we do have a valuable feedback on how different policies and activities resonate in the region and what has to be done to improve the situation. The last Balkan Barometer edition has shown that a staggering of 74% of citizens in the region perceive climate change as a very serious or serious problem. And the same situation is with pollution in the region, where also 74% of citizens consider it as a problem. However, despite this high awareness, the same survey shows that the environment and climate protection are among the last at the priority list of problems that our economies have. Far behind the unemployment, economic situation, corruption, brain drain, crime, education, political disputes, health systems, and so on. I think that this speaks a lot that there are no overachievers in environmental issues in the region. But ironically, if I can say that, the region is an overachiever in air pollution itself. Last winter, 6 towns from Western Balkans stood at the top of the list of the most polluted cities globally. Therefore, it is no wonder that on average, people living in the Western Balkans lose up to 1.3 years of life due to air pollution. And this amount of pollution that we breathe in our countries in the region is directly responsible for up to 1 in 5 premature deaths in the Western Balkans. So the situation is quite dramatic, and these ominous indicators show that we have to act resolutely and bring highly desirable changes, since nothing will be fixed for it on its own or by a miracle in the region. Everybody, I know that this is an endeavor of all groups, communities, civil society, government, local government, as well as media, and all should move together in trying to inform people, raise the awareness, and take the measures needed to change the situation. We try, as you know, from the Regional Cooperation Council to coordinate the regional initiatives. We do have one regional working group on environment that is established 5 years ago. And I think that it provides a platform, a good one, for discussing environmental and climate problematics, identifying regional priorities. It maintains the regional cooperation, let's say, on how best to address all these existing challenges that I mentioned. we do have the possibility to not only to organize meetings, but to discuss at the high level representatives from governments from the region. So I'd like to take this opportunity to announce our next ministerial meeting, which will be convened after the summit in Sofia. The meeting will be co-organized by RCC and the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations of Bosnia and Herzegovina as co-chairs for this year. I hope that this will be a very good opportunity, and especially because it's after the Sofia summit, to discuss a long-awaited document which is expected to support a comprehensive ecological transformation of the region, to unlock the economic potential of the green, low carbon and circular economy, and set the flagship goal of achieving climate neutrality by 2050. This is the declaration on the green agenda for the Western Balkans. Veva mentioned it as well. RCC is working on that. We have already prepared, let's say, the basis for what is going to happen in the Sofia summit, and I do hope that we will have in the following days to hand it over to the joint presidency of the Sofia summit, and I expect this declaration to be adopted by Western Balkans leaders in the Sofia summit during the meeting of 10th of November, which most probably, unfortunately, is going as well to happen online. Now, this declaration will be based, let's say, or have its grounding on the European Green Deal. It mirrors its ambitions. It is also referred in the economic and investment plan launched by the European Commission at the beginning of this month. So I think that we have all the pieces in place now. And as I mentioned, we are all aware that the region needs to change the development paradigm and decouple economic growth from resource use and emissions. We are also aware that this unprecedented COVID crisis calls on us to rethink another more sustainable way or more sustainable models for our development. But we are aware, all of us too, that no one alone, a group, a city, a community, or economy can solve the problem. In the region, as you mentioned, dear ambassador, we need quite strong political willingness, but we need concrete actions and real commitments to meet the deeds from these statements, declarations, to move the walk. And I think that this willingness from all the contributors, all the actors, governments, community leaders, mayors, civil society, private sector, business community, and individuals is mostly welcome. So I think that it's high time for all of us to join forces with the EU, set ambitious goals, and to intensify our activities on these achievements. Said that, I'd like to thank you for the attention, and I'm pretty much confident that the discussions that will flow from our opening panel will be even more interesting and with more details. Thank you.
Hvala, gospođo Bregu. Žao mi je što niste tu, ali ne brinite, gospodin Nikičević je tu da brani.
Thank you, Madame Bregu. We're sorry that you are not here, but don't worry, Mr. Nikitovic is here to defend the colors of RCC. This introduction is prolonged, but it was really interesting to hear the thoughts and messages our speakers shared with us. I assume that 140 persons who follow us on Zoom and you in the hall heard repeatedly the term Green Deal. This is the topic of our first panel. I will kindly ask Mr. Radovan Nikicevic from RCC and Mr. Mirza Hujic from the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations of Bosnia and Herzegovina to join us. on the stage. Last year, the European Commission introduced an ambitious plan to fight climate change with 50 items. So, what is the green plan of which we heard in the opening statements? Soon you should see on the whiteboard some clarifications. What is the green plan? This is a strategy to achieve sustainable economy. Bosnia aimed at making Europe the first climate neutral bloc. The plan is more efficient use of resources, recovery, and reduction of pollution. It describes ways in which economy can be boosted and no one should be left according to this plan. The plan also includes the engagement of citizens in the activities of environmental protection, improvement of the current and creation of new activities, opportunities for exchange of knowledge and cooperation. Unless we do something, the future generations will face the pollution, raising level of waters, and negative effects on the economy. The EU, through the mechanism for fair transition, will provide technical support to those who will be mostly affected by the transition to the green economy for clean and healthier future. Together, we are Europe.
Evo danas je sa nama
Today, we have with us Mr. Davor Pecan. He's head of the Office of RCC with the Directorate for Environment. Mr. Pecan is known as a person who has been active in the environmental protection for 20 years. Mr. Petan, can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you well. Thank you very much for joining us. And we've heard in the previous discussions and statements what is the Green Deal, and we had a very simple video clip which sought to explain this. Can we try to clarify further? Is it a set of measures or a new document or a new policy, new course of action, which will change the manner of our life, the method of business activities, and how this affects the West Balkan countries and Bosnia and Herzegovina? First of all, may I also greet all of you, excellencies, dear leaders, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored and happy to be here as the a representative of the General Directorate for Environment of the EC. If you allow me, I will continue speaking in Croatian, and I believe our colleagues will better understand me. The EU Green Deal is not only what we said about it today, it is also a new development strategy of the European Union. It is an extensive strategy, detailed strategy aimed at separating economic development from the use of resources. It is aimed at protecting environment and making EU climate neutral by 2050. It contains increased ambitions for reduction of greenhouse gases until 2030. It is an extensive plan, includes several initiatives that were started already, that were launched, and it has an important international dimension. It should be noted that the elements of the Green Deal, which pertain to circular economy, conservation of biodiversity, fight against pollution. These are only some of the initiatives. These ideas will be integrated in all the policies of the EU in future. As I already said, the Green Deal, why did EU initiate adoption of such plan of the Green Deal? Why do we need such massive transition towards green solutions? This is because we realized, if you allow me, I would like to share my screen with you and show you several slides on this topic. I hope you can now see my screen. We see that we have projections according to which, forecast, according to which the human population will grow up to 10 billion people until 2030, and we expect global challenges regarding the use of resources, consumption of resources. The use of plastic will increase to an extreme, and we already have 50% plastic as waste or littering in the EU. And this is a huge pressure on biodiversity. Without significant and urgent activities, measures in the area of climate change, it is expected that over 100 million people will be forced to move from the area where they currently live until 2050. EU Green Deal is the integral part of the EU strategy for the implementation for sustainable agenda and sustainable development goals. And the EU was to implement this agenda across the levels of the government and across the territories of all the countries. There is this slide shows an interesting image with 17 development goals. And we see that this is a system which is tightly interlinked, and we cannot, for instance, reduce loss of biodiversity without addressing climate change. And also, we cannot address climate change unless we, at the same time, address the huge problem of reduction of decrease of biological diversity. We see that our biosphere is the basis for everything. We can see it from our personal experience, feel it from our personal experience, and our well-being and our prosperity depends on a healthy and sustainable ecological system. On this slide, I wanted to show several initiatives which were either launched or will be launched and adopted very soon within the European Green Deal. Some of the initiatives, as I said, were already launched, such as new plan for circular economy, and we had a new strategy for biodiversity in place already. We already adopted a comprehensive plan to review ecological aspect of our chain, food of chain, from farm to the table. This is the strategy called from farm to the table. We are currently developing a plan for reduction of pollution, and we are moving towards the ambition of zero pollution ambition. And within our green plan, we will also adopt a number of strategies and initiatives which will enable us to implement our plan. It is important to note that this Green Deal has its international dimension. As Director Ruiz Calavera and other previous speakers said, it is reflected in the fact that we adopted the green agenda for the Western Balkans, which reflects the Green Deal from EU, and it allowed the countries of the Western Balkans and candidate countries to join our efforts on the implementation of the Green Deal.
Also, another important thing that needs to be mentioned is that the green agenda is something that will encourage our recovery, not only economic recovery, but recovery in the context of recovery from the negative impact of the COVID pandemics. And we expect to we will need citizens of these countries to spend more than 10 trillion euros that will be borrowed from the next generations. What's important that in the next steps of economic recovery will have to be guided by health achievements, economic logics, and first of all, it has to be a sustainable, green, and socially just system of recovery, guided by the principle that we must not do harm. We are working on the recovery of the European Union, and we are trying to encourage the investment of the public funds in our future and recovery from the COVID crisis, guiding us towards sustainability. Our priorities are reforms, the same thing that we advocate in the Western Balkans countries, the same thing we advocate for the EU. We are continually going through different reforms that concern the tax system, environment management, managing protected areas, air, and all other components of environment. We will have to invest significant amounts in the different sectors of our economies, like circular economy, biological diversity, and more than anything else, we will have to refrain from making or doing any harm, because we are borrowing our environment from the future generations and we have obligations towards them. I'd like to thank you with now. And with this, I am concluding my introductory address, but I remain at your disposal if you have any questions. Thank you. The objectives of the Green Agenda cannot be met unless the neighbors of the European Commission harmonize their policies towards the sustainable green and clean future. We heard that the Green Agenda will be adopted in the summit that will take place in November in Sofia. So what's the agenda behind the agenda? The understanding is that the EU cannot implement the Green Agenda that we just heard about, that is expected to make the European economy sustainable. The Green Agenda for the Western Balkans accompanies this Green Agenda for the EU, of course, being adjusted to the countries in this region. And so I will ask the next panelists. Of course, I have to keep track of time and the Zoom audience and their questions. So I'd like you to give your input over 3 minutes. We have online Ms. Oshie from the General Directorate for Neighborhood and Negotiations. I hope she can hear us.
Yes.
How did the DG NEAR do this adjustment? Will the Commission support the region in meeting the goals of the Green Agenda? And if yes, how? In what way?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning to all from my side as well. My name is Guillemette Vachet, and I follow environment and climate change issues horizontally in DG NEAR for 5 years now. I'm actually stepping in for my colleague Wojtek Kowalski. I'm very pleased to be virtually with all of you today and very grateful to the EU delegation in Bosnia and Herzegovina to have organized this event, which is very timely. Indeed, it has been mentioned several times. The Economic and Investment Plan and the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, which is accompanying it, have been adopted, put forward by the Commission just a couple of weeks ago. So my presentation, and I will try to keep it to the 3 minutes, will make the link between what my colleague Davor has just explained on the Green Deal, and also what my colleague Radovan from the RCC, Regional Cooperation Council, will explain a bit more into details on the Green Agenda. So I would like to walk you through actually 3 points. So the link between the Green Deal and the Green Agenda and how it is relevant for Bosnia. First. Second, what does the Green Agenda mean in practice? And finally, I will briefly touch upon implementation and next steps. So the link between the Green Deal and the Green Agenda, there is a bit of echo, but okay, I hope you can hear me well. So just first on the link between the Green Deal and the Green Agenda, I would like to explain that each Green Deal initiative, starting with the Green Deal itself, does entail an international dimension. So whether it's the Farm to Fork strategy, the Circular Economy Action Plan, or the Climate Law, all Green Deal initiatives already adopted or to come are setting the strategic framework for the rolling out of EU policies and legislation internally, but also to work together with its partners. Indeed, then there can be no effective green transition for EU without its neighbors. They need to be fully on board, and that at the earliest possible stage. One of the reasons for that, and it has been already mentioned this morning, is that our economies are interdependent, and then climate change and pollution know no borders. For example, EU being responsible for 7 to 8% of greenhouse gas emission at the global level, it cannot address climate change alone. So comparable action by other regions will be critical for addressing all the global challenges in a meaningful way, all the challenges that were just presented before by Davor. And this is all the more relevant for Bosnia and Western Balkans in general, given your European perspective. This perspective implies commitments to align with the evolving EU acquis, but as well to the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. So the direction of EU policies and actions are critical for your own direction. And that is the reason why the European Green Deal makes a clear reference to the preparation and implementation of a green agenda for the Western Balkans. Of course, we need to take into account that the starting point of Bosnia may in general be different from that of the EU, whether it's in terms of policies, of energy security, or in terms of access to financing. So, as it was already mentioned, initiative of the Green Deal may need to be adapted to the realities and the specific needs in your country in a proportionate manner. A first step has been achieved with this Green Agenda for the Western Balkans that the Commission has put forward together with the Economic and Investment Plan. Before addressing shortly the implementation of the agenda itself and the next step, let me address my second point on what the Green Agenda means in practice and what are its main elements. I believe Radovan will most probably talk you through more details in his own presentation. So what are the main elements of the agenda and what does it mean in practice? Just to recall, it's an agenda which is not new. It is built on actually the Podgorica statement on clean energy transition that was signed by all Minister of Energy and Environment in the region. And for Bosnia, it was actually the Minister of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations at that time in 2019. And it's also, of course, built on previous commitments, ongoing cooperation framework, and continuous alignment of acquis. So in the end, it's building on already solid cooperation. But what is important to notice in the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans is that it's clearly a positive agenda, and beyond obvious health or well-being benefit for your citizen, it will bring lots of opportunities for reinvigorating your economy and becoming fit for the future, as well as to improve your competitiveness. We also understand that this green approach is largely what people in Bosnia would like also to implement. And we know that people also see those economic opportunities in green growth, circular economy, sustainable tourism, modernized agriculture, and quality products. All that were already mentioned this morning. So what is new here in the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans, in line with the European Green Deal? It is this encompassing nature and the cross-sectoral approach. Beyond the so-called traditional Chapter 27 on environment and climate change, the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans does reflect the 8 transformative policies of the European Green Deal by laying out a set of well-defined actions grouped in 5 main pillars. So I will maybe not enter into details of those 5 pillars, because I think Radovan will explain them further. But just to stress that the first pillar concerns decarbonization, which entails climate action, clean energy, and smart mobility. Indeed, here we look at supplying clean, affordable, and secure energy, while harnessing the region's high potential for renewable energy. We also look at building and renovating in energy and resource efficient way, as well as smart and sustainable mobility solutions. So that's the decarbonization pillar. Then the second pillar looks at circular economy and an economic development model based on circular economy, striving for more resource efficiency, which is a real opportunity for the Western Balkans to leapfrog to innovative green technologies, catering both to the local but also to the European market. The third pillar is about depollution for air, water, and soil, and we will hear more about the specific point on air in the next session. Air quality indeed affects the health of citizens and the economies of both the Western Balkans and the neighboring EU states. So addressing pollution of all natural capital is fundamental for overall sustainable development. The fourth pillar concerns sustainable food system and rural areas. A sustainable food system with a neutral or positive environmental impact with high standard of food safety and quality will contribute to the modernization of the agri-food sector and once again, the access to the EU market. And finally, the fifth pillar is about natural capital, protection and restoration of ecosystems. The region natural wealth, and it has been also mentioned several times this morning, has really a great economic potential through sustainable tourism and responsible farming. Safeguarding ecosystem will also provide services to mitigate and to adapt to climate change. So that's an overview of the 5 pillars contained in the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans. Now, how will this agenda be implemented and what are the next steps? Well, first, just to clarify, I just want to say that we are rather at the beginning at the process. But the EU stands, of course, by the region in terms of technical and financial support, ready to support Bosnia to implement the Green Agenda through all the possible various means, with the new instrument for pre-accession IPA 3, with the Western Balkan investment framework, and we're also considering new financial instruments such as green bonds, for example. Of course, we are also talking to IFIs, so financial institutions who are interested in coming in. They already are quite active. The EIB is now the EU Climate Bank. But of course, national means will need also to be mobilized. So the Green Agenda is about investment, but not only the heavy investment, it's also about all the work which has to be done at the regulatory level, reshaping key national strategies, promotion of new consumer behaviors, capacity building, implementing best practices, regional cooperation. So all this would require indeed strong cooperation with all the relevant stakeholders, including civil society and regional organizations, to achieve a meaningful results. And finally, to be successful, the agenda needs to also be owned by the region. And that is why we are very grateful that the RCC is coordinating the preparation of a declaration by the Western Balkan leaders in Sofia, which will be an unequivocal endorsement across the board of the agenda and a commitment to work on its implementation. Once that is done, of course, the next step will be to operationalize our agenda, developing a series of action plans where we will define what gets done, by whom, and by when. Some of the action will be more appropriate at the local level, national level, or regional level. So as a word of conclusion, I would like to stress that on the DGNI and on the Commission side, we are fully aware that the green transition will not happen in one day and that it set an ambitious bar. But the EU is really ready to support you along the ambition that you will set and shape for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And in the end, and I think it was also stressed this morning several times, it is our joint responsibility towards future generation. I thank you very much for your attention, and I remain at your disposal for any further questions. Thank you.
Hvala, gospođi Vaši. Evo, gospodine Nikčeviću, očigledno je da ovakav pristup
Nikčević, it's obvious, it's apparent that this approach requires involvement of all countries, levels, sectors. Speaking from your experience as an expert in the Regional Cooperation Council, how can we secure this synergy of various stakeholders and speak about true implementation, not only the adoption of the Green Agenda? Thank you very much. I will now switch to English, if you don't mind.
Thank you for inviting us, for giving us the opportunity to participate in this discussion about maybe the most important document for our region. I think that panelists that already spoke before me already well explained and provided a very good outlook on the situation regarding the European Green Deal and the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans. So maybe the focus of my intervention would be on the declaration on the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans and how we can translate requirements, objectives of these important documents such as the European Green Deal. So I will start with the declaration that we as RCC are invited to prepare and through which we expect our Western Balkan leaders to commit to the Green Agenda and this comprehensive ecological transformation of the whole economies, and which is actually ahead of us. I would like to emphasize that 3 points are very important in the whole process. First of them is regional ownership. And that's why we in the Regional Cooperation Council, as the very beginning of this process, tried to involve all Western Balkan economies, to consult them, to consult relevant ministries, to also consult regional organizations, relevant organizations which are important for this process. The second important point is what Gülmet already mentioned in her intervention, that is difference in starting points between the European Union and Western Balkan countries, talking in general, of course, Bosnia and Herzegovina included. And unfortunately, this is absolutely true, and this just means that we have to invest more efforts, that we have to not only to walk, but really to run, to be much faster in order to achieve this final destination at the same time as the European Union member states, and this is carbon neutrality by 2050. The third very important point, as you rightly mentioned in the introduction to this panel, is that what actually also is mentioned by the President of the European Commission for the land, that this transformation, ecological transformation, which is foreseen by the European Green Deal, can be only fully effective if the European Union's immediate neighborhood sets the goals with the same ambitions and take effective actions. This means that we have to react swiftly and with really high ambitions. The Western Balkan is recognized by the European Green Deal as an inherent part of this transformation, and having in mind several most important things. First of all, geographical position of the Western Balkans, which is surrounded by EU member states. The second important reason is the EU accession aspirations that all Western Balkan economies already expressed. And the third is existing and untapped huge potential for savings, for changes in the area of environment and climate change. And recognizing all these elements, that's the reason why 1 out of 47 key measures foreseen by the European Green Deal actually is the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans. So I mentioned this participatory approach that we were following since the beginning of this year. We organized a series of meetings online, unfortunately, consultations with all Western Balkan economies. These meetings included a consultation with all relevant ministries, but primarily with our regional working group on environment, which was already mentioned by our Madam Secretary General, Bregu. These consultations also included the Regional Biodiversity Task Force, but also relevant regional organizations such as Energy Community Secretariat, Transport Community Treaty Secretariat, Standing Working Group on Regional Rural Development, and many, many others. Consultations also involved, and of course, all these meetings were organized in close cooperation with Director General DG NIR, and consultations also included NGO sector and international financial organizations. So these inputs obtained through this process were very helpful for drafting the Green Agenda itself, but also drafting of our declaration. Since I was asked to be very brief now, I would just try to provide briefly some brief information about the content of the Green Agenda. First of all, of the declaration. First of all, it has this political part presenting the main elements and processes that created actually framework and set foundation for our joint work on this document, primarily on European Green Deal, on Poznan, the conclusions from Poznan Summit, Zagreb Declaration, the Conference on Clean Energy Transition, which is already mentioned by Gülmet, and many, many other international commitments and agreements. Then the declaration has, the second part of the declaration is actually more technical. It mirrors the structure which is already explained of the Green Agenda, which is already explained by Gülmet, and provides brief outlook, brief presentation of every single of the situation in every single pillar that is mentioned. And of course, then the declaration lists key priority actions which have to be taken by our government. just to give you a perspective from our point of view about the situation in all these pillars. First of all, talking about the decarbonization, we all know that the Western Balkan region is highly vulnerable to climate change. The study that we in RCC commissioned and published 2 years ago showed us that the mean annual temperature already rose for 1.2 degrees Celsius. And I think this speaks a lot, since we all know that target of Paris, well-known Paris Agreement, is 2 degrees by end of this century. So in first bit more than 20 years, we already reached 60% of this goal. And our study also showed that if we do not take immediate action, we can face with really high growth in temperature, which can reach even above 5 degrees centigrade by end of the century. Situation is in the energy sector, which is one out of 2 main contributors to climate change besides transport. Mobility sector is also very difficult in Western Balkan region, which is heavily dependent on coal, and that is maybe the most important factor which contributes to climate change. Around 70% of electricity in the region is produced in thermal power plants, which also pollute air, and air pollution was discussed today. Among all, the big problem is in the Western Balkans is that this coal is often subsidized by our governments, and in some cases subsidies are even higher than subsidies for renewable energies. Mobility sector is also heavily dependent, almost 100% from fossil fuels, with very small contribution of electricity. Only in rail sector, biofuels are not still placed on our market. Electricity in road transport does not still exist. So transport sector is the second sector which has to be addressed in this decarbonization efforts. I will try to shorten now the second, also the part of, since I understand that we are running out of time. Also circular economy, the Western Balkan has to abandon this linear take, make, use, dispose approach to consumption and turn to circular economy, to think how to extend how to improve sustainability of all products, how to integrate eco-design and extend eco-design requirements from energy-related products, as is the case now, to all other products, how to reduce generation of waste, how to also properly and adequately treat waste, which is also one of the biggest problems in the Western Balkans. Then the pollution, agriculture are also very important, very important part of the declaration is dedicated to these 2 areas. Talking about agriculture, I think that Western Balkans should swiftly transpose elements of farm to fork strategy, which was already mentioned during the previous discussions. Then we come to the area of nature protection and biodiversity. We agreed, and this is one of the elements of the declaration, to develop regional biodiversity strategy, to prepare regional forest landscape strategy, to work together on defining joint position in terms of biodiversity for the next conference of the parties, which will take place next year in China, and which will be aligned with the European post-2020 biodiversity framework and with the European position for coming conference, et cetera. Just one interesting detail from European biodiversity strategy, which is adopted in May this year, that 1 million of species out of 8 millions which exist today at our planet is under the threat of extinction. So 1 in 8 species maybe will not exist in next couple of years. I would stop here about talking about the content of the declaration itself, and I would just say what are next steps. First of all, we expect, as mentioned by our Madam Secretary General, this declaration to be adopted, endorsed by the Western Balkan leaders at the summit in Sofia in early November. And of course, then we come to the most important part, and this is implementation. We in RCC are planning to prepare a roadmap for the implementation of the Green Agenda, together with action plans, and of course, together with, in cooperation with the European Commission and all Western Balkan governments. This implementation will not be an easy task. I think actually it will be a very challenging task. It will be maybe for Western Balkans particularly maybe a bumpy road, but I still that the drive will be interesting and dynamic. So as I said earlier, we have to run, not only to walk, and I still believe that it is feasible for Western Balkans to achieve climate neutrality by 2050.
Hvala gospodine Nikčeviću i mi se nadamo isto tako. Evo,
Thank you, Mr. Nikčević. We also do hope so. Mr. Huic, we heard November is close, agenda is being adopted, RCC is preparing a roadmap, but as the previous speaker said, this is a rather challenging process. To which extent and how and is Bosnia and Herzegovina ready for this road, and how the coordination will take place in our government with several layers of the government? Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Sattler, and excellencies from the embassies who are participating through the Zoom application, dear ministers, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really honored that I was given this opportunity to speak at today's conference, and may I convey greetings from the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations and other officials who are involved in the environmental issues. We know that the implementation is the right path when we need to reach some goals, and our goal is to provide healthier future and to join Europe in this effort. We hope that this forthcoming conference will render results and that we will be happy with the results. As you may know, Bosnia and Herzegovina signed multiple agreements and conventions, and it is regularly taking steps to implement these conventions and agreements. Of course, we have received regular helps for some member states, such as Germany, Sweden, Germany, Czech Republic, and I cannot number all of them. And we take this opportunity to thank them for their assistance. But I hope that this green agenda for the West Balkan will contribute to this process too. The obligation of Bosnia and Herzegovina is to implement the obligations arising from the international agreements and instruments. But in this process, we have faced multiple challenges and problems. But on the other hand, we see this as a chance to improve our environment and make it comfortable for life of our citizens, and this is why we have to continue fighting. Climate change are the focus of all speakers, because we have already felt the impact or adverse effect of climate change in our daily life. In its complex administrative structure, Bosnia and Herzegovina has so far successfully implemented its obligations from international agreements in form of 4 annual reports to biannual reports, and now we have prepared the initial national plan, and we are preparing the new one. I should mention Barcelona Convention, which was amended recently, and it is the only international instrument now which was adopted by all the members, and we are proud to be the part of this convention, and we are also part of a number of other activities at the international level. Now, I should also note that we also prepared the approximation strategy within an IPA project, and we are now working on its implementation. We do face certain challenges in these efforts, but we will certainly address these challenges and successfully implement this strategy. The second most important strategy, which we are preparing, is the environmental strategy with a huge assistance from the Kingdom of Sweden. This document is in a draft form, and we expect to finish this process in 2 years. Regarding the green agenda for the Western Balkans, I should note that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are fully aware of all the activities related to Green Deal and other important documents in the environmental sector. At the beginning, we had a problem with the cooperation within regional cooperation council. At the beginning, Bosnia and Herzegovina was assigned to chair the meetings for environment, but the meeting was postponed or cancelled because of the earthquake in Tirana, and then we had pandemic, so the process slowed down. Without these difficulties, the documents would have been prepared long ago. What Bosnia and Herzegovina proposed in its comments to the green agenda for the Western Balkans is that this document should take into account all the different circumstances and features of the Western Balkans countries, and to take these specific features in addendums to this document. But the most important thing is that this document is realistic and feasible, and that all the countries are committed to contribute and use all their capacities to achieve the final goals. Once I was told me that I should not say to catch up with the EU acquis, but to harmonize our legislation with the EU acquis. Thank you, Mr. Huic. We have questions from our audience. The first one for Mr. Percan. Do we have Mr. Percan online? Yes, I did not leave the meeting. I'm here. Only one brief question. Will the Green Deal, EU Green Deal, support financially a just transition from the coal-based industry? And if so, with this, how big will be this support, given the aim for decarbonization until 2050? Yes, I believe it will, but in terms of the amount of financial assistance, I think my colleague can try to answer this question. But what I can say, I know for sure, is that these interventions and actions will be supported by financial packages. Before we start with the second panel, may I ask His Excellency Excellency, Mr. Sattler. A lot has been said, but if you could please try to sum up the first part of the discussion.
Thank everybody who participated. It's not easy to put together such a hybrid event these days and to make it interesting also for everybody. But I just saw that we still have 130 people with us online, and this is excellent. So thank you very much for that. Thanks also to all the panelists from the European Commission, from the RCC, from the ministries. Thank you very much for being with us. I just want to have, not trying even to sum up here, too many things have been said, and it's not easy, you know, in 2 hours to really take away things. But let me try to give you 2-3 things which I would like you to take away from today. First, what I mentioned in my intervention is the incredible dirty 16 coal-fired power plants you have in this region, Western Balkans. 16 coal-fired power plants produce more CO2 than all the 250 in the European Union. The colleague from the RCC said it's up to 70% of the energy mix comes from coal. So this is an incredible figure. And it tells you that it is really a life and death figure. And this is the second thing I want you to take away from these 2 hours, the 303,000 premature deaths in Bosnia and Herzegovina every year. 3,300, it makes 10 per day. Yeah? So 10 people in BIH die prematurely because of air pollution. I think this cannot be overemphasized. This is not an afterthought. Environment is not anymore a luxury topic. It's very much a life and death topic. And last point I want you to take away is what I showed you in the beginning. I didn't show you, I told you, but let me also now show it to you, which is the app. I would like everybody, at least those who live in this region, and especially those who live in Sarajevo, Zenica, Tuzla, to get this app. And I don't know if the camera is there, but it's called My Air Quality Index Air. It looks like that. It was, as I told you in the morning in Bielove, it was 155, which is an orange face you get, which is very bad. And then comes the red face, which is from 200 upwards. Now let me check what it is. It is yellow face, still grumpy, a little bit better because there's sunshine outside. And you can see how it looks. It's grumpy because it's above 50. 50 is the threshold until which is considered safe. After 50 comes up to 100, the yellow one, then comes the orange, and then comes the red one. I can only encourage you, upload that app. It will change your daily routine. I can assure you of that. Thank you.
Hvala ambasador, evo i na ovom tipu. Sada imamo kratku pauzu tokom kojeg ćete pogledati.
Thank you, Ambassador. We will have a short break. You will be able to see a short video clip, and our panelists will change. Thank you in a couple of minutes.
Može.
Zeleni plan Evropske unije. Zeleni plan Evropske unije je strategija za postizanje održive ekonomije, uz istovremeno ostvarenje cilja prema kojem bi Evropa do 2050. godine trebala postati prvim klimatski neutralnim kontinentom. Plan podrazumijeva prelazak na čistu kružnu ekonomiju radi učinkovitijeg korištenja resursa i obnovu biološke raznolikosti i smanjenje onečišćenja. Opisuje načine na koje potaknuti privredu, poboljšati zdravlje i kvalitetu života, zaštititi prirodu i pritome nikoga ne zapostaviti. Plan podrazumijeva i angažovanje građana i zajednica u aktivnostima zaštite okoliša, nadogradnje postojećih i pokretanje novih aktivnosti, stvaranje prilika za učenje, razmjenu znanja i saradnju. Ako ne učinimo ništa, naredne generacije suočit će se sa onečišćenjem okoliša, toplinskim valovima i sušama, rastom nivoa voda i poplavama, te negativnim efektima na ekonomiju. Evropska unija će kroz mehanizam za pravednu tranziciju pružiti finansijsku podršku i tehničku pomoć onima na koje će prelazak na zelenu ekonomiju najviše utjecati. Za čistu i zdraviju budućnost. Zajedno smo Europa.
Šta ima agenda?
Zeleni plan Evropske unije. Zeleni plan Evropske unije je strategija za postizanje održive ekonomije, uz istovremeno ostvarenje cilja prema kojem bi Evropa do 2050. godine trebala postati prvim klimatski neutralnim kontinentom. Plan podrazumijeva prelazak na čistu kružnu ekonomiju radi učinkovitijeg korištenja resursa i obnovu biološke raznolikosti i smanjenje onečišćenja. Opisuje načine na koje potaknuti privredu, poboljšati zdravlje i kvalitetu života, zaštititi prirodu i pritome nikoga ne zapostaviti. Plan podrazumijeva i angažovanje građana i zajednica u aktivnostima zaštite okoliša, nadogradnje postojećih i pokretanje novih aktivnosti, stvaranje prilika za učenje, razmjenu znanja i saradnju. Ako ne učinimo ništa, naredne generacije suočit će se sa onečišćenjem okoliša, toplinskim valovima i sušama, rastom nivoa voda i poplavama, te negativnim efektima na ekonomiju. Evropska unija će kroz mehanizam za pravednu tranziciju pružiti finansijsku podršku i tehničku pomoć onima na koje će prelazak na zelenu ekonomiju najviše utjecati. Za čistu i zdraviju budućnost. Zajedno smo Europa.
Evo nas, tu smo nazad.
You're back again. Panel number 2, air quality. I'm honored to welcome Minister Edita Džapo and Minister Karpejic, and we also have some other panelists who will join us through video link. It is entirely clear that we all need clean air. We need it for our economy also, and the pollution is the part of our life and the method of in which our economy is functioning. The EU is acting in three directions: through directives, then national contributions, and the third one is the platform on the major polluters, which obliges all the member states to comply. Mr. Hendricks, we have on the online, is the process to ensure cleaner air in EU finalized, and did all members accept these three courses of action?
Well, good morning, or I guess it's good afternoon by now. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join this discussion, and thank you for the opening question. I think it's fair to say that the quest to clean air is not done yet. We have made progress, but we all know that in too many places across the continent, we still have air that needs to be improved. I'll use the 7 minutes that you indicated I might have to bring into discussion a few reflections on the importance of tackling air quality and air pollution in Europe and the policy framework we have in place for this as a basis for discussion. And I hope that you can indeed see my screen.
Yes, we can.
So what I would like to show you in 3 slides only is that environmental pollution, of course, continues to be a key challenge globally and in Europe. The European Environment Agency only last month published a report that reminds us that 13% of all deaths in Europe are attributable to environmental factors. That is a number that translates to 1 in 8. And this number is even higher in some parts of Europe. And as this map illustrates to the left, in Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of those countries where it's particularly high. And the number there is above 1 in 5. We heard these numbers before. And among these environmental factors, air pollution is the principal one that drives disease, with around 400,000 premature deaths attributed to ambient air pollution annually in the EU. The European Environment Agency has numbers for each country. And for Bosnia and Herzegovina, that number is well over 5,000. There's a range the ambassador before mentioned, 3,000, depending on how you estimate. But the detail shows that we are in the thousands of premature deaths and not in a small number. It is also striking, I think, to translate this differently, to see that 17% of all lung cancer deaths in Europe are related to air pollution. There are many other statistics of this type, which I will not have time to list now, but they amount to one key point. Air pollution has significant health impacts that often impact the more vulnerable in our society most. Air pollution also has an economic impact. You mentioned that up front. Our estimates put these numbers of direct costs, mostly due to lost working days and the cost to the healthcare system, at levels of above 20 billion euros per year, and indirect costs, so those that factor in the impacts on well-being, into the hundreds of billions per year. The costs of taking measures is not small, granted, but they pale in comparison to the benefit that we get out of it. So tackling air pollution makes economic sense. And it's important to also stress that air pollution has an environmental impact on top of that. There is eutrophication, so the abundance of nutrients that harms our ecosystems, as one example. You also have the impact of ozone pollution and vegetation, which has a direct impact also on our agriculture. So what I would like to leave you on the slide is a clear message that air pollution is important and has a triple challenge for our health, for our economy, and for our environment. As you know, and you indicated up front, the EU has established a clean air policy framework, which primarily attempts to protect human health from the risks of air pollution. And there are three pillars here. The first one on the top is the Ambient Air Quality Directive, or the directives, there are two of them, which set standards for 13 pollutants. These standards are to be attained by all member states throughout their territory, and we know that not all of them, not even half of them, manage to do so for each pollutant and every location in their member state. It is worth noting that these directives also require an air quality monitoring network, and with more than 4,000 monitoring stations across the continent, and half of which deliver near-time data, we are well served when it comes to environmental data. It is also good to see that there are monitoring stations that in Bosnia that do deliver information to the European Environment Agency. So the first pillar is to achieve levels that are safe for our citizens. The second pillar is to enable that, which is the national emission reduction targets that are established in the National Emission Reduction Commitments Directive, try to reduce air pollution at national level by setting commitments. And that is important also in view of a transboundary reduction of pollution, as air pollution has a local dimension, but also travels across borders. Member states have to develop national air pollution control programs in a view of complying with this. So to step forward a plan on how to actually get the reductions that transition. And the third pillar addresses the key sources of pollution in energy, agriculture, transport. For this, in the EU, we've developed rules for industrial installation emissions, for eco-design of energy, using products to increase their efficiency, real-world emission testing for cars, and part of the clean mobility package, which puts us on the path to very low and zero emission mobility in the decades to come. So we have a set of legislation, but we need collectively to make this work. And this is my third slide. In practice, this will mean we need to achieve emission reductions in all economic sectors, and especially those that contribute the most to air pollution. You see here a number of examples. I will not walk through all of them in the transport sector, the power and energy sector, and in the agricultural sector. And maybe I'll focus your attention on the middle one, the value of promoting the substitution of old and dirty stoves and boilers or heating mechanisms into cleaner models by banning fuels that are dirty, by banning waste burning, or by subsidizing schemes to replace boilers to more efficient ones. There are many win-wins that can be harvested in this regard. This also means integrating clean air solutions more broadly into measures of all types when it comes to transport, energy, and industry, as well as agriculture. It means also that decarbonization and clean air need to go hand in hand, and that cooperation is necessary across different sectors and levels of governance to make this happen. So this is not a single, there's no silver bullet and there is no simple path. For these measures to be successful, I'd like to stress the importance to find a balance between incentives and funding on the one hand, follow through enforcement on the other hand, and if you allow me, cooperation and dialogue on the third hand. In this regard, maybe a little side note to also mention that EU funding is available to support these efforts, not only in the EU, but also beyond, and that there's a bespoke funding mechanism for environmental issues, the LIFE program, that is in principle intended for EU member states, but there's scope to explore how non-member states country can be co-beneficiaries in a project led by an EU member state. I said I have 3 slides. I have one last one I'd like to skip as a concluding slide, which is to make a quick reference to the Green Deal that we launched a year ago and that we discussed in the previous session. The Green Deal highlights a commitment to a zero pollution ambition for a toxic-free environment, and it stresses that protect Europe's citizens and ecosystems will need to better monitor, report, prevent, and remedy pollution for air, water, soil, and consumer products. And obviously, all 4 of these elements are necessary to get a handle on the clean air challenge. It's not an easy task, but one that we, I think, can agree is imperative that we succeed in for our environment, for our economy, and most importantly for our health. Thank you.
Hvala gospodinu Hendriksu. Evo, u uvodu današnjeg događaja spominjali smo Švedsku kao jedan primjer, odnosno zemlje koja ima, možemo reći, zlatne standarde.
In the introduction, we have mentioned Sweden as a country with the golden standard in environment protection. I read somewhere that the first law on environment was adopted in 1909. It was the law on establishing the national parks. So this is a country with more than 100 years of a tradition of the efforts to ensure a better environment. To what extent these experiences can help Bosnia and Herzegovina that has a very different social context? We asked this question to Mr. Stefan Astro from the Swedish Institute for Environmental Research.
Thank you very much. I hope you all can hear me fine without too much echo.
Yes, all good, thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm just going to give a quick presentation here. Distinguished guests and panelists and dear colleagues, thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting conference. I would like to thank the Office of the European Union in Bosnia and Herzegovina for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to present the Swedish experiences regarding air pollution and bilateral air pollution capacity building projects, which will be the main theme of this presentation. But first, in addition to the effects on preterm death from air pollution that the earlier panelists have emphasized, I also want to stress that air pollution causes economic damages for your own wallets and the growth of the economy. As an example, we know not only that air pollution affects preterm deaths, but we know that air pollution affects labor productivity and thereby capital available for productive investments. Just in Sweden, a country with very clean air, air pollution causes absence from work and studies corresponding to some 0.4% of the Swedish GDP. So this is yet another argument for doing something. And understandably, air quality is still an environmental policy priority in the EU and in Sweden. In the EU, as Thomas mentioned, the revised National Emission Ceilings Directive was agreed upon in 2016. It's important here to recognize that the directive sets emission targets until 2030 and beyond, clearly emphasizing that air quality, despite large historical improvements, is still an important issue. In Sweden, 3 out of 16 environmental quality objectives are directly linked to air quality. But, and here comes the kicker, given the transboundary nature of air pollution, we know and we've known for decades that it is crucial with international collaboration to achieve decent air quality in Sweden, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in other countries. So Sweden is therefore also engaged in international policy processes like the UNECE Air Convention and in supporting the build-up of capacity in other European countries. in addition, of course, to being an EU member state. So all in all, good European air quality matters to Sweden. Now, the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency and the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency have since many years been engaged in bilateral air quality capacity building projects in Europe. Often this has been done through engagement of other experts, such as researchers at universities or governmental agencies, and also engaging independent research institutes such as my own, IVL. Belarus, Russia, Serbia, and the Ukraine are examples of countries Sweden has been engaged with in bilateral air quality projects. Sweden recognized that an increase in an all-European capacity to deal with air quality problems, including an active engagement in international policy processes, is crucial for a continued improvement of European as well as Swedish air quality. As an example, the Swedish and Bosnian capacity building project IMPAC is one such project. This particular project focuses on developing air quality assessment and management systems and on taking action to improve air quality. More specifically, IMPAC aims to ensure an infrastructure for hosting air quality data and reference laboratories. The project is also setting up emission inventories and source apportionment modeling for 6 cities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as taking practical action on air quality, launching information campaigns, and improving the implementation of already existing air quality legislation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I would like to go in for a more general experience sharing here. I have personally been involved in quite a few of these projects, and our experience from being engaged in these projects re-emphasize that the domestic knowledge and the domestic expertise in the partner countries is plentiful. It has never been a question of us from Sweden coming in and teaching the other experts and the other scientists how to do things. The challenge is rather a matter of ensuring institutional prioritization and that the right scientific competence works with the right topics. So having right person in the right place and making sure that we can lift the priority or raise the priority of these issues. And given the last winter's extremely poor air quality in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the surrounding region, there should be no need for me to stress the importance of a successful implementation of projects such as IMPAC, because these projects are an important stepping stone to acquire a good air quality in the region. And again, this is not a luxury quest for Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is not about achieving some intangible objective. I just want to reiterate, if air pollution in Sweden corresponds to a GDP loss of 0.4% of Swedish GDP due to absence from work only, just imagine what the number is for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Doing something about air quality can very well turn out to be a pure economic cost-saving effort for Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is just me hypothesizing, but I know the Swedish number, and that's a big number. Finally, and here comes another positive piece of news. The COVID-19 have caused tremendous human suffering, but it has also forced us all to learn how to manage video conferences, such as this one. And this has really opened up for an enormous opportunity. So this conference is yet another proof of the possibility to increase the participation of experts and government officials from Bosnia and Herzegovina in international air quality processes. And for this, all the working bodies under the air conventions have moved their meetings to video conferences for the entire year, and these are open for all. And the convention encouraged more active participation by experts and officials from Bosnia and Herzegovina in these working bodies. And this can now be done so much more easy and inexpensive than before. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and go back to the
uistinu interesantna observacija, nisam o tome baš
Thank you very much. This is an interesting observation. I never thought about this, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Today, we are able of organizing these conferences without having to spend money and additionally polluting environment by traveling. Bosnia and Herzegovina, when it comes to air pollution, especially in urban environment, is getting worse. And that is the opinion of majority of our citizens. In September this year, we had a public survey as well as a number of focus groups. So I will ask our technicians to show here and to all our participants participating through Zoom to show some of the main results of this survey.
29% of residents believe that their air pollution is the major ecological problem in their communities. 21 of them they are concerned for their children because of the pollution. 15 of them of citizens know what is the air quality index. Measures which have the largest support among the citizens are 60% want to have stronger control of industrial facilities, 59 of them transition to cleaner production, 57 sanctioning companies which cause pollutions, 21 of them believe that economic development and environmental protection may be compatible. And then we have some results of focus groups where majority of citizens found that the situation with the environmental protection, especially air quality in Canton Sarajevo, is unsatisfactory. Problems they face due to air pollution include limited opportunities to spend time outdoors. They cannot let any fresh air in their living, working space. Discomfort they feel because they are trapped indoors, health burden, psychological problems, and so on. Majority of citizens rely on their own assessment when it comes to air pollution, taking into account odor, visibility, and breathing difficulties. Only a few read official data. Citizens demand a systemic solution underlying the important role of civil society organizations.
So we had the opportunity to see what our citizens think about this topic. The air pollution is a part of the green agenda for the Western Balkans, and the European Commission has been emphasizing their readiness to help implementing the strategy for improving the air quality. My questions to Ms. Srebrenka Golic, the Minister for Special Planning, Construction and Ecology of Republika Srpska, and Ms. Edita Đapa, the Minister for Environment and Tourism in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. How ready are we for this kind of assistance? Are there any strategies already in place for air quality, and at what stage of fighting for air quality we are now? If you agree, Minister Đapo, that we first go to Minister Galic from Republika Srpska, who is with us online. Allow me to welcome you on behalf of the Ministry of Spatial Planning, Construction and Ecology of Republic of Srpska government, and thank you for organizing this conference in the conditions of the new normalcy. We are all representatives of institutions and individuals, and we assign strong importance to the protection of environment, both for our own sake and for the sake of the future generations. I often quote wise words that we have not inherited this planet from our ancestors. We are just borrowing it from our children. The ministry that I am heading is one of the ministries. The set of rules and that need to be complied and a lot of phrases that need to be followed. Now it's the matter of conscience. The commitment to complying with all this. The ministry that I've been heading 10 years already, at the end of my mandate, it will be 12 years, has been determined to create conditions within the scope of jurisdiction to improve conditions for the health and quality of life of people, which is one of the fundamental human rights. One of the ways how we do this is by aligning our national legislation that applies to the environment to the EU legislation. And the first area that we organized in this way is actually this ecology. Harmonization of the regulations contributes to the global objectives of reducing the pollution, protecting air quality, dealing with climate changes, and the ministry, in addition to all obligations, the ministry has been complying with the UN Convention. In Bosnia-Herzegovina has prepared 3 national reports, 2 biannual reports on greenhouse gases, which is an obligation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and we are now working on the 4th national report about the greenhouse gases. When we talk about the obligations on the Paris agreements, we are now working on the report and the greenhouse gas with the greenhouse gases and compliance with the proposal that Bosnia-Herzegovina has submitted. Republika Srpska, the entity that I come from, and the ministry that I lead, undertook to reduce emissions from the large factories so that we reach these border values by 2028 that have been defined by the directive on emissions in accordance with the agreement that we signed on the establishment of the energy community. And the next is the national plan for reducing emissions and burning plants to reduce the emissions from the 2 thermal plants, Zvornik and Gatsko. Zvornik installed a system for filtering the gases and thus reduced the sulfur emissions a lot before the deadline. The trial work of this plant was completed on the 20th of October. And then the guarantee measure has been started for the maximum load, and then from 24th to 26th of August, some guarantee measures have been conducted. Preliminary test results of these loads showed that all the values are below the ones required by contracts. Most importantly, the carbon dioxide and particles that are a lot below the limit. And this is illustrated that without desulfurization, the power plant would emit 18 tons of sulfur dioxide. And this amount has been brought down to 150 kilograms. That means 100 times less. Additionally, only 1 to 2 milligrams of the particles have been emitted, which is significantly below the requirements of the project of 20. The Ugljevik thermal power plant is currently implementing a similar Zvornik has become one of the cleanest thermal power plants in Bosnia-Herzegovina and is the only thermal power plants that meet all these obligations. The ministry is supporting the transition to the alternative sources of energy and focus on the projects from the renewable sources that can contribute to reduce air pollution and protection of health. In cooperation with the local communities, Uh, we're working on the heating from renewable sources, replacement of the fossil fuels, and those projects that use biomass that impacts the air pollution in winter period. This is in Banja Luka, Prijedor, Gradiška, but the problem is with individual households that are many. The energy efficiency project in Bosnia and Herzegovina that is implemented by our ministry, because we cover the environment and construction. We are working hard to warm up the buildings to install these measures that ensure energy and efficiency. And we are trying to switch to the renewable sources of energy. This has brought us savings of 60 to 70% of the energy, and it will also reduce the CO2 emissions of 102,000. This indicator is caused by the installed equipment and implemented the energy efficiency measures. The ministry is trying to work with the IFIs, banks, and provide affordable loans for the tenants and co-owners of different buildings, so that more buildings would implement energy efficiency measures. And in the end, I would like to once again thank you to the EU delegation, Regional Cooperation Council, for organizing this conference. And I especially want to extend our gratitude to the Embassy of Sweden. They've been one of our most reliable partners when it comes to environmental protection. Thanks to the Swedish government and the SIDA, environmental protection is gaining in importance every day. We owe gratitude to the Swedish Agency for Environment Protection that has been implementing the project, under which we hope to increase the number of metering stations that will allow our bodies to monitor the air quality and help implement the measures. We also thank them for helping us come up with the strategy of environment protection that has 7 areas, and these documents will be an important contribution to the progress of Bosnia and Herzegovina towards the European Union and meeting the obligations for 2030, and in terms of giving further guidelines for our future work. Ladies and gentlemen, the primary strategic goal of clean environment is where we need help of each individual and national and international institutions. The activities that we implement in the attempts to have better air quality have to become the part of our daily life, so that we can each and every one of us contribute to healthier environment. Today, in the pandemic of the coronavirus, the care for health of human has been more in focus. The satellite images from various parts of the world that we had the opportunity to see during the spring lockout were very illustrating. The transport and energy production has been reduced, and it showed cleaner air. So we have to ask ourselves, can we continue with the positive changes while at the same time we get rid of the COVID with the help of the experts, so that we can retain this trend of reduced pollution.
Pozivam da ostanete sa nama, budući da...
Thank you, Minister Golic. I invite you to stay with us because we have received some questions for you and we will address them at the end of the panel session. Minister Japa, we have the same question for you. Is the Federation ready for the support of EU when it comes to the implementation of the agenda? Do you have any strategies in place and what has been done at the level of the Federation regarding the clean air? May I also welcome everyone in this room and all those who follow us on the Zoom platform. I should thank the EU for the organization of this crucial conference discussing such an important topic. The pollution, air pollution or poor quality of air is something that, as we heard from previous speakers, affects human health. And in addition to food and water, a human being needs 30 kilograms of air on a daily basis. This is something what we cannot change, and the air must, such air should be of high quality, except for the fact that it affects the health. The pollution can also cause premature death, causes diabetes, fertility, infertility, poor health among children, and this results or has the consequence in a very poor performance and poor health of BH citizens. This involves several sectors such as health sector, social sector, and others which should do something on this level. We've heard that 7 million people die annually as a result of poor air in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is 3,300 persons, according to the World Bank survey. And I think the Center for Health and Environment in Tuzla carried out a study in Tuzla together with the Public Health Institute. And this study shows that the poor air quality reduces the lifespan by 24 years on average. This is something we need to focus on, and what the Federation has done is it has worked on setting up and improving its legal framework. In 2003, we adopted the law on air protection, which is quite good, and it prescribes the responsibilities of the Federation and the cantons, and the Federation is responsible for setting up the system for air quality monitoring, and we have our Hydrometeorological Institute, which is responsible for that. Last year, we introduced the Air Quality Index. The experts from the Hydromet Institute, together with the Institute of Public Health, established this system throughout the territory of the Federation, so citizens can check the level of pollution on a daily basis or hourly on this app. The obligation of the cantons is to prepare their cantonal air protection plans or intervention plans in case of high level pollution. Three cantons which have most difficulties and challenges with air is our Sarajevo canton, Tuzla canton, and Dobo Zenica canton. Only at one occasion, the Sarajevo canton actually introduced emergency measures, but it was on the day of Christmas, and it was rather controversial. Uh, this air pollution problem is a global problem that has to be addressed at the local level. Let's take the example of Brussels and London. They banned the vehicles from driving in the downtown area, except if these are electric vehicles. So we need courageous and fast action. The Ministry of Environment and Tourism is currently preparing an environmental strategy, and I will use this opportunity to thank the Embassy of Sweden for their financial and expert assistance to this end. We are developing this strategy for the Federation, Republika Srpska, and Brčko district, and most importantly for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Next year, we will be probably able to submit the draft strategy next year to the parliaments and assemblies to adopt it. One of the component of this strategy is the improved air quality. And also, we set up the system of fee collection based on principle polluter pays. All major polluters pay fees to the fund for the environment. We return 35% to the canton, and the rest is invested in the projects to improve the air quality. I should also add regarding the air quality index, it is important that what was invisible previously is now clear, obvious, measurable, and visible, so we can follow on a daily basis the changes of the index in various towns. The message I would like to share today is that the approach or treatment of the air quality by all governments should involve cooperation with the private sector, international community, individual citizens, and it is not only something important for the health of our citizens and for life saving, but it is our strategic decision for geopolitical positioning. We wanted to show that we belong to the family of EU nations. And just, I have received many questions. I think we have multiple questions for both ministers. We discussed the green agenda and we said that the Green Deal cannot be fully implemented unless the neighboring countries actually burn tires. Sarajevo has been routinely on the list of the most polluted cities worldwide. As an architect, as a citizen of Sarajevo, and of course as the Minister for Environment of the Canton Sarajevo, I'm asking you, can the problem with air pollution in Sarajevo be resolved? How long will it take? And do you have any plans you are currently implementing with your team? First of all, before I try to answer your questions, may I thank the organizer, the EC, and Mr. Sattler for organizing this event, especially during, given the circumstances surrounding pandemic. After 24 years of private practice in real sector as an architect, I got an opportunity. I wasn't reluctant when I accepted actually my appointment as the minister. And in early March, we I started to work, and we cover not only air but also water and land. This is an issue which is crucial for citizens, and we we try to scale things down to the local level to have citizens participate in this. Our country on the pollution map has been quite prominent, and I think Albania too. We were only red, the only red countries. So this means that these are the two most polluted countries, but realistically, we did not have the same starting point as other neighboring countries because we historically had this heavy industry located in our country. So we were in worse position. We had the worst baseline position. After, in addition to this, we also had the war behind us. This war made many people go away, in addition to people who died during the war. And we are now, the Sarajevo canton is among the most polluted ones, together with Zenica and Tuzla canton. How can we address this problem? I'm certain that we can do this, but we need to do it strategically within the period between 10 and 15 years. Our task at this initial stage during the first 2 or 3 years to stop further increase of pollution. And if within the next 2 years we uh, succeed in maintaining the same level of pollution, I think we should be happy. And then we should try to create all the conditions to actually engage in activities to clean the air. What is important for me, and you mentioned that I'm an architect and urban planning officer. Every architect looks 3 or 4 years in future, and urban planning officer maybe 20 or 30 years ahead. But the problem in our canton is that we don't have visions. Over the past 25 years after the war, we never actually defined the vision for the canton, and we never informed our citizens how the canton should look like in 20 or 30 years. And this is why we became a polygon for investors who are only eager to obtain profit, while our political forces could not resist to this. In our canton, we did not have plans in place. People were constructing facilities and buildings as they pleased. And that's the problem which we actually found when we came to this ministry. My point is, I accepted the work in this ministry, and because I believe that well-regulated urban planning will certainly mean a town which will be cleaner, with its air, with its water, and land by at least 70%. To this end, I welcome the Cantonal Ecological Action Plan, which was adopted in 2015. In 2017, we engaged into a study of ventilation corridors, and it was adopted at the level of the assembly, and that provided a basis for me to try to maintain these ventilation corridors, and we are adapting our urban planning to these ventilation corridors. I expected that we may have problems, but I know it can be resolved. Everything what on is going on at the local level, and actually, and it is of course normal to have it at the local level, but at the cantonal level, government must also respond so as to enable us to have urban plans which will be appropriate and which will stop the illegal construction, which will allow us to improve green areas in the downtown area, to liberate some place where we can have the income of fresh air, and the citizens would certainly welcome this. Investors and developers are not happy about this, but they will certainly find a way to expand the town in a different way. At the same time, urban planning is also a savior for water, because I believe that water may even be a greater problem here, and at least in the current circumstances and with the current trends. We and to this end, we are doing huge efforts, but very likely we have been also disturbed by the fact that we had the change of government every year or two. So even if the government starts doing well, they cannot achieve anything because they leave too soon. And the law on spatial planning was so poor that we had to prepare in an entirely new law. So in 2 or 3 years, we may have entirely new circumstances and conditions if we do all these steps, and of course, including better air in this valley.
Hvala ministre. Evo, čuli smo ranije i ambasador Sattler se pohvalio s vama.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. We heard it before, and Ambassador Sattler said he was using this application. The fact today is that the technology is developed very quickly. The pyramidal setup of the instruments for measuring air quality only exists at the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. We have with us Professor Masic from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. Do you hear us? Yes, I do, and I hope you can hear me well too. Well, I have to apologize right away. I cannot give you more than 5 minutes. We have a lot of questions from the audience, and our time is expiring. What does it mean, the pyramidal measuring setup? Is it something that can be used by official institutions? What have been your experiences? Is it excessively expensive? What can you tell us about this? Well, first of all, I want to say that I am greatly honored for being given this opportunity, and I want to thank the organizer, the EU delegation to Bosnia and Herzegovina, for giving me this opportunity to address such an important gathering. I will try to be as brief as possible and say just a couple of things. I will broaden the picture a little bit and say that this is a little bit wider issue here at place. It is about the role of advanced research and what the research groups at the universities are doing. So this is a very important component in all this discussion, because the issue of air pollution cannot be fully resolved and effectively resolved unless we have advanced research. This fact is often neglected here. Up until a few years ago, there has been almost no serious research of this topic. Some people may find themselves offended. Yes, of course, there have been individuals who did some very important things. However, there was no systemic and well-planned research. At the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering of the Sarajevo University, we have restarted organized activities in the past 2 to 3 years. And I must say this here with huge help of the Swedish Embassy to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I must say that we are very, very grateful for this. So thank you. I just want to show this slide to help you better understand some of the things. Also, since the university is belongs to the canton also joined in the efforts. So we are seeing some positive moves when it comes to understanding the role of the advanced research when studying the air pollution. This is something that other countries like Sweden have done earlier and that they have been doing continuously. This is not something that you do once and that's the end of it. This is something that we need to continue doing. In our talks with the partners, experts from Sweden and our local experts, we have tried to define some top priorities in this area of research issues that require immediate attention. We have often heard the word carbon. We hear it mentioned every day, carbon and decarbonization. Well, it is a surprising fact that practically until yesterday, there has been no research of carbon. The metering and analysis of carbon can give you a lot of information about the causes of pollution and a lot of instruction where to seek the solution. Only now, with the help of this project that we did with the Swedish Embassy and the government of the canton, we are just now starting the first analysis, measuring the first part of the carbon, the inorganic. The organic is still not its turn yet. You have the opportunity to hear the air quality index. It helps a lot to inform the population. However, from the point of view of advanced research, it is not enough just to say the amount of pollution today, but we need to describe the structure of this pollution. Not all components are equally dangerous. Some are carcinogenic, some are not. So taking into consideration the structure of pollution and the particles and the share of the particles and distribution in terms of their size and the overall amount is something that needs to be done. And we started doing this last year. Another important area is the ultrafine particle matters, the particles that are on the scale from the 10 to 1,000 nanometers. These are very complicated to detect due to their size, but they are the most dangerous because they penetrate the bloodstream and have no serious obstacles getting to the brain of people, causing various serious consequences. We have also developed cooperation with the Stockholm University. We have been making an analysis, the glucosane level that gives us the information on the burning of the cellulose wood. And some things are still waiting to be implemented because we still don't have the appropriate capacities in Bosnia and Herzegovina to do them now. When we're talking about these pyramidal structures that you mentioned, very often we are lacking coordination. So well, we have made some important improvements in terms of measuring. You have the network of federation and cantonal metering stations, but there is a lack of coordination, inter-laboratory comparisons. There is plenty of room to improve things. And what we are doing now is not a replacement for the activities done by the government institutions, but adding to it, following a similar recipe as it had been done in Sweden, where it is clear what is the role of the university, what is done by the university, what is done by the different institutes, etc. So I tried to make my address as brief as possible, and I will once again repeat my expressions of gratitude to the Embassy of Sweden and to the cantonal government. They are becoming more active since recently, and I hope that will continue. And this is a strong message to all stakeholders. We need research. We are now just starting the story, and there is a lot more to be done in the future. Thank you, Professor. You have been a true professor, very concise and very fascinating information. Well, we have received a lot of questions. We will not be able to answer all of them. The first that I select is for our guest, Mr. Pecar. This is a follow-up to the previous question for you. The green agenda. Will the emissions from the meat industry will also be addressed? Are you here still? Yes, just very briefly. Yes, I'm here. I just want to make a reference to my presentation, and I apologize if I hadn't made myself sufficiently clear. The part of the green agenda is also the strategy of field to or farm to fork strategy, which is focused on this specific issue, the overall impact, environmental impact of our food chain, if I may put it like that. From the cattle raising and the growing plants through processing to the table, to our fork. This strategy has been published at the webpage of the European Commission and can be read. It is publicly available, so I invite the colleagues to download it and read. Based on this strategy, we will build on the legislative proposals for the EU. Thank you. We have a series of questions for our lady ministers. We have a question for both of them. When the PRTR will start functioning, the registry of polluters?
Minister Japo, or yes, Mr. Petson, we heard you and we thanked you. Now we are on the second question. Minister Golic, would you like to answer the question? Yes, but please be short. The question was what the ministry has done to prevent illegal construction of small power plant. No, the question was when will the PRTR be in place and functional? That is in the responsibility of hydromet institutes, and they're doing steps towards this, and I think this will happen very soon. And as for the question regarding the river Bielan, I have not received any requests. And as for the construction of small hydropower plants on this river, there is no such application. If citizens have different information, I invite them to apply to the relevant inspection bodies. They will receive the answer from them. As for the small hydropower plant near Kalinovic, the ministry informed the public of the application for the environmental permit, and this application for the environmental permit and the entire documentation can be reviewed on the internet site of the Ministry for Spatial Planning. And the public can access this document and analyze this document. I am one of citizens against the construction of these small hydropower plants, but I think the idea was to review all the concessions from 2006. However, the majority of parliaments were against this idea. Mostly the parliamentarians from the opposition. I don't know why. I also proposed a ban on this and revision of all concession agreements. and their basis for such agreements. However, there were no members of the parliament who were interested to do this, and I hope that their awareness shall be raised and that they will do this in future. We also hope that this will occur in future. We heard some very bad news about the mini or small hydropower plants on our Bosnian rivers. The same question for Mr. Japop. Establishment of PRTR system is an obligation, and we need to have it in order to be able to report data and information about major uh, polluters. This information system was set up in the Ministry of Federation. It's possible that they did this in the Hydrometeorological Institute in Republika Srpska. So this PRTR system is in place. However, many researchers and non-governmental organizations warned us that it was too slow, that it needed to be updated. Over the past 2 years, we disclosed a tender for improvement and update of this system, but no one actually applied. I don't know whether we offered too little money or we didn't have anyone who wanted to engage in this. Regarding the question about small power plants, I believe it is clear from media articles that the Federation is following up on this issue. I think the audience did not want to ask you this question, but they ask whether you are considering increasing sanctions for polluters and introducing uh, limit values for some polluters. As I said, we revised the rule book for air quality monitoring, and we changed this limit values or thresholds, alert thresholds. In the Federation, the environment is a shared responsibility among the Federation and the cantons, and we cannot even adopt the rule book or regulations without public consultation process with the cantons and the public consultations for citizens. I think this proposal can be found on the web page of our ministry, and the gentleman who asked the question can provide comments. So the public discussion is ongoing. Question for Mr. Kapijic. Do you have an assessment how many household stoves in the canton use solid fuels? We engaged in a study together with the UNDP, and we will cover 100,000 household stoves. Our assessment is that these are about 20,000 stoves, but we will know this mid next year when we finish the study. Anyway, we will very soon impose the ban on transport and use of coal in the canton Sarajevo, and this study we will use to have a general overview, and we will also have programs to help citizens who have no capacity to transition to different forms of heating. What I can say, this is one of the major post-conflict problems, these individual household stoves. We have a lot of houses which were constructed illegally on the slopes, and now we cannot even provide them infrastructure, and we cannot go to green areas such as Trebevic and Mojmilo, where because we have this wall of illegally built houses, but people use everything like tires, coal, and these PM they produce, they fall down to the valley, and we have a huge problem. If we succeed in this ban, we will impose a ban on not only using coal for heating, but also the storage of coal in the canton of Sarajevo. And I think this will be a turning point for us in terms that we will improve the air quality, and the measuring station will show this improvement even by mid next year. We also need to regulate large polluters, but I think this is a good start for improvement of the overall situation. Now we are at the end of our event. I will ask Garrett Kelly, expert from SE ChangeNet. Garrett actually followed the discussion on our discussion, and now I will ask him to present some conclusions and to address future next steps. As Mr. Huic said in his presentation, these should be measures which are feasible. That's crucial. So from
Sure. Thank you. Hvala puno.
Hvala vam.
I'm going to do 3 points in 3 minutes. I think the most important thing is that what's coming from the European Commission and President van der Leyen's Green Deal is absolutely a game changer for the European Union globally, because what we're doing is we're switching from an economic and social system in which we dig things up, burn them, use them, throw them away, and then go back and do it again. And we're changing that to being a cyclical economy. We take things, we recycle them, we upgrade them, we use renewable energy, we stop polluting our rivers and lakes. And this is an immense change, a sea change in what's happening in the EU. And the fact that several of the speakers have talked about the fact that because we're neighbors, we get to be part of that plan is something that's definitely a new and important opportunity, but will require us to change our minds too. The numbers, of course, are obvious. It's like 9 billion of investment with another 20 billion that could be added to that in partnerships. And the question is whether or not there's the political will there. The chairman of the presidency has said that there has been red lights warning for quite some time, and now it's time for a green transition. And we see that in Sofia that they're going to sign a declaration on the 10th, but this needs to be turned into practice. And I have 2 concerns about practice. Everybody has mentioned air pollution, and everybody has talked about the data that's out. But when you look at the surveys, you see that 70% of people in Bosnia are concerned. It's their number one concern. But when it comes to how they decide whether they go outside the door, they look outside. You know, the European upper limit for doing something about air quality is 50 parts per million for 2.5, the thing that gets in your lung and gives you cancer. We regularly have in towns and cities across Bosnia, you know, multiple folds of that value. And we're talking about stabilizing that. I believe that the people need to become more informed about how dangerous the air that they live in and that their children, not just their children, them, how damaging it is to their economy. And then this would be an incentive for the politicians that they elect to actually use the Green Deal to make targets for reducing these things, not to stabilize things, to say in the next 3 years, we will halve air pollution by doing this and this and this. And then in 3 years' time, based on the science, as Adnan has talked about, go back and say, we have done this or we haven't, and why not? And I think that the Green Deal and the money that will come here and the programmatic support is going to be very important in helping any government at any level who wants to do that, to achieve it. And I'm wishing them all luck in Sofia, and all of us who have worked on this program, luck in continuing to support these kind of targeted interventions to really reduce things rather than talking about them. Thank you.
Hvala gospodine Kelly. Uistinu je bilo 3 tačke.
Thank you very much. This was 3 points in 3 minutes. 3 hours later, the time flew. Dear participants, dear audience, we are at the end of our conference on clean environment and healthy future. I hope today's discussion raised some new ideas and prompted you to engage in improvement of the air, in better policies, in compliance with the EU standards, and thank you. Take care of yourself, of your dearest ones.
Mi sad silazimo dole.
Imam pravo da dišem čist zrak.
Jel ne trebam ja ići? Da idem? Nisam ptica, ne mogu da
Imam pravo da dišem čist zrak.
Šta? Tamo? Košarac. Košarac. Opa. Pratite, pratite. Ma oni već daju izjave, ne, mislim ja ne. Ja im ne treba. It's okay.
Thank you.